Okay, so it is 5:01 p.m. My name is Alex Trembecki. I am the chairman of the Town of Fairfield Ethics Commission. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Ethics Commission scheduled for today to order. And the first, we have a very brief agenda. The first item on the agenda, the only item on the agenda, is to continue our conversations and discussions relative to the advisory opinion sought by Town Attorney Jim Baldwin. We met previously on this question, and our task was to see whether or not there was any precedent from prior ethics commissions on this issue, and we did receive a couple of opinions that touch on the issue, which I've circulated to the members of the commission. And it seems to me that they do answer the question, and it was wise of us to go back and see what information we had out there previously in order for us to accept it or not. We're not bound to accept prior opinions, but it seems to me that it is important from a consistency standpoint that we at least consider that and then make our own deliberations and recommendations. So with that, I kind of open it up to the floor if anyone has any comments, thoughts as to how we should proceed. Anyone?
Who wants to go first?
Hello?
Well, I don't recall discussing the last, let's see, we just got something in regard to the meeting on August 28th, 2017 from Brian.
Oh, I haven't even seen that one myself.
Yeah, that was just today. So maybe, I don't know if you want to.
Well, maybe Brian, can you summarize what it's, or anybody summarize what it says? Because I just didn't see that one.
Go ahead, Brian.
It had to deal with, I think someone was a member of or had a child in the Fairfield County Day or Eagle Hill School in Southport, and it said actually in this, I'll actually read it to you since I have it here. There's 3 members, 1 commissioner. Let's see. Have 2 children attending the schools. Should they recuse themselves if they have children attending a school with a matter before the HDC? Initially, 1 commissioner recused himself, and then separately 2 others did not. And so I thought that this was fairly similar to what we're being asked to opine on. And basically, the decision was as follows. After discussion was moved that the Ethics Commission authorize the chairman to make the following statement in response to the letter. We cannot make a finding that this situation is or is not in accordance with the standards of conduct. Based on the information before us, we advise individual members to review the standards of conduct and use that to guide their individual decisions when considering whether there is a perception of conflict of interest. We note that the individual should consider the perception of the public who may not be familiar with the personal circumstances of the commission member or the matters before the commission. I just thought that this was some guidance. This was not necessarily an opinion, but a decision to punt on making a decision that came before the commission. I'm thinking that this may be a little bit similar to the situation back in August of 2017 with completely different commission members.
Yeah, and just in hearing that, it seems to me, and again, looking at these prior opinions and just thinking about this alone on the subject of what's in the code, it's pretty obvious that if you have a conflict, you've got to not appear in front of any of these boards or commissions, or if you're in a position where you're on a board or commission and someone comes in front of you with something that is a conflict of interest, which is pretty well defined in the code, that you've got to recuse yourself. I think the question, though, is do you need to resign from one of these boards if you're, you have a situation where decisions that you could make, and particularly the one that came from Attorney Bologna, about being on the Conservation Commission, the response was, well, wait a minute, I get it. If you're going to, you can't represent clients in front of the Conservation Commission, but if you're going to be making decisions on the Conservation Commission that might sometime impact clients in the future, then you really should not be on the commission, because it creates a perception that somehow or another you're benefiting yourself in some way. And that, I think, is a little broader than I think what Attorney Baldwin was suggesting. But again, I think we need to be guided by that to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I agree.
I agree also. I think the perception
Craig?
of dual representation is
Yep.
the concern.
I think that's the intent. Is
Yeah.
that you don't want to create that perception.
Right.
And
Brian,
if
thoughts?
indeed you feel you are going to create that perception, then resignation probably would be in the best interest.
Yeah, I think the question goes towards, I think Attorney Baldwin indicated that there were some thoughts or consideration at putting some professionals like a soil scientist on a particular board or commission where his or her expertise could be valuable. And obviously, having certain professionals on boards and commissions is a value. But say zoning, if you have attorneys who would their firm or they would be appearing before zoning on a regular basis, and you put Joe on the board or commission, and he rules in a way that sets up precedent for allowing a client of yours in the future to appear before the board or commission with favorable precedents. It looks like that could have been a setup or a step. So it's very. Each case is different, and I think that the kind of the guidance from these previous decisions or minutes tell us that I don't think we can say give an opinion on this. I think we have to punt back and say, listen, we're kind of like the August 28, 2017 memo. Each member has to decide what they're going to do. But I think you have to give thought if you're going to be a soil scientist or attorney before you sit on a particular board. Is that going to be a problem for you in the future if you want to represent somebody in the future, or your firm represents people?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think we do routinely. We're fortunate in the sense that we do get people with special expertise or knowledge that come on these various boards and commissions, be it attorneys on planning and zoning, or people who appear on building committees, or any of these sorts of things. Have expertise in these areas. And we're fortunate to benefit from people. We don't want to discourage people from getting involved, because I think the expertise as volunteers is very useful. But again, I think you've got to go into this with your eyes wide open, knowing that if you're going to get on one of these boards or commissions, you really are pretty much going to be out of business for doing business in front of any of these boards and commissions on behalf of your potential clients. It's just, I think it goes without saying. And again, it's a question of not so much actual conflict of interest. I think we can all agree that that's pretty obvious, but I think there's a question of creating a perception that somehow you're feathering your own nest in some way.
This is Dana speaking.
So,
go ahead, Nancy.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so the 1998 letter from the Ethics Commission had, pointed out, again, it was, to have trust and confidence in the integrity of government, and that your own interest as a partner in a law firm, which appears before the Conservation Commission, and I believe that could also apply to, your, expertise as a soil expert on behalf of a client, that your interest for your client may conflict with the interest of the public. And in both instances, it's, they're all, each individual instance would be, have its own separate set of parameters of what is acceptable. But I think it goes back to it in both, 1998 and then in the 2010 that it is the perception of impartiality and maintaining the integrity of the government and the separation that an individual cannot represent dual representation. So
Nancy?
from,
Yeah, it seems to me that we need to just create the process, right? Is that what he wants?
Well, I think I'm just looking. I'm looking at his question. The first question is he's asking about these ethical situations, and then he says that if the answer to the questions is a blanket prohibition, meaning no, that they can't serve on the board or commission if they're going to be representing people in front of that board or commission, and I think that's pretty much what these opinions say. And I think, from my perspective, we should be consistent on that.
Okay.
And I would agree with you on that.
All right, do we have a consensus then that that's kind of where we are?
Yes, I agree.
Dana?
Yes.
yes, I agree that you cannot have dual representation, and that in the 1998 letter it even extended to the law firm, the partners, and associates. So I think the consistency is important.
All right, so then, if we're all in agreement on this, then I don't know that we need a formal motion. Maybe the thing for me to do would be to prepare a letter, and then we can have perhaps another meeting. I think if we're on the consensus, I can draft a letter, and perhaps we should have just another meeting to be sure that we're all on board with it, and then issue it. That makes sense.
Agreed.
I agree.
I have one question about how a person is supposed to come forward with the information. So if I was on a commission or a board and I did have a conflict, who would I speak to it about? How would I learn more about my decision to the process?
Well, I think what I would do, Nancy, in my letter would be to refer them to the town code. In this advisory opinion, it actually goes to Jim as the town attorney, and then I have to. My hope is, and it's really beyond our purview, that whoever it is that runs for office or gets on one of these boards or commissions is advised by the first selectman or somebody to, hey, by the way, take a look at the town code and take a look at the provisions about the standards of conduct. I would hope that that's part of their indoctrination process.
I'm not sure that it is. I guess we could find out, but it seems like it might be a valuable comment or suggestion when you
I can put something in the letter to the extent that although it's not our purview, procedures should be put in place to make sure that people are aware of the code of conduct or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Everybody else think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't have to be a long letter, just a summary.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I don't want to get too far afield. I want to answer his questions he's asked us for, and we're empowered to issue an advisory opinion in response to that. And and I think to some degree as well, when these situations do come up, it's incumbent on the town attorney to weigh in on these issues. And I think maybe he's looking for some guidance from us.
Support.
So that when the situation comes up, he can say it's not only is it my opinion, but it's the Ethics Commission as well.
Perfect.
I have a question. It's Dana. The difference between the 1998 letter versus the 2010 is, the 1998 letter ultimately, is our opinion that the appropriate course of action is either for you to resign as a member of the Conservation Commission or for your law firm to decline representation. Ultimately, what happened?
I don't know.
That was very clear.
I assume he I knew Mike, unfortunately he's passed on. I don't know if he resigned from the Conservation Commission.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that seems like it's
But
pretty
it's just
clear.
interesting. Right. Like, but I just think it's interesting of the difference between 98 when it was said it is recommended that you resign versus it's not out, to 2010 of it's not our jurisdiction. We think, perhaps the district could adopt a different requirement. I just think it's interesting of the shift.
Yeah. Well, this is a little different though, right? Because I think in Bologna's case, he was the chairman of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
And, they were saying, hey, look, I mean, your firm, you can't just recuse yourself. That's not good. That's not enough.
Correct. And I also think it's a matter of the number of times, for
Right.
Brian's 2017, how many times would there be a representation for Fairfield Country Day and or Eagle Hill School before the Historic District Commission versus the number of times that a law firm representing a client would be before whatever the commission would be.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because the Conservation Commission is pretty much, involved in a lot of land use issues, and I know Mike's firm and Bill Fitzpatrick as partner at the time, and Bill still does a lot of land use work. So it was really it wasn't a one shot or one-off kind of thing. It was a regular occurrence.
Right. And I think that's also where you can look to the history of how many times we've had a member of whatever board or commission recusing themselves for whatever purpose.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? All right. So then I'll take a crack at preparing something. We'll circulate it, and then we'll have one last meeting and figure out the next step.
Yeah. And once again, Alex, I would agree that if it's a one-off. If it's a one-off time, then you recuse yourself. But again, if it looks like it's going to be a long-term or consistent, where there's going to be a conflict of interest, then that's way different. So I think we all agree on that.
Okay. We're good?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second it. Okay.
Who made the motion?
Nancy made the motion, and Brian, did you second it?
I seconded, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good
Alex.
evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Take care.
We'll be in touch. Thanks.